In this Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch video, we're going to be talking about the turn-based tactical RPG that goes into Steam Early Access today that you can begin playing right now as the time of this video, that kind of spins off the original title of the game and makes the game a bit more into the roguelike side of things. So if you've never heard of Lost Eidolons before, this is a game that came out in 2022. We also did a video on that game, but this game is kind of done in the vein of Fire Emblem, if you're familiar with that at all. It's kind of very, very similar to that, maybe in a more indie way, but it kind of follows that. Where Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch differs from the original game is that it mixes a lot of roguelike elements into it that kind of combine, let's say, Darkest Dungeon and Fire Emblem into something that's a little bit more unique. And I can honestly say that I've never played anything quite like Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch before. It was extremely intriguing because of the mashup and inspiration from these two games. I've never seen anything quite like it before. You can clearly see the inspirations behind it while you're playing the game, but I've never seen anything quite like it before. So I kind of want to dive into how this game plays and what the mechanics and features are of the game, kind of better acclimate you to what it's all about. Before we get into it, however, a big shout out to Ocean Drive Studios for sponsoring this video. If you guys like what you see in the video and you want to pick up the game, you can click the link below to support the channel. So that the general premise of the game is that you're Ash, he's the main character, and he's going to be the one that's bringing party members along with him on his expeditions and excursions into the world of Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch. And kind of the story is that, like, you basically died and you've made a pact with a powerful being that's basically bringing you back in order to do her bidding. For better or worse, you're kind of roped into it, and you're basically fighting your way through all these enemies to a boss fight. Not unlike you would see in something like Darkest Dungeon. You have a map that's laid out where, you know, each point you go to is going to give you options of things that you can do. You can, you know, go to camp and rest and replenish your health, or you can go fight a battle that may reward you with certain items, or you can go to a trader and buy things if you have gold. And, you know, as you weave your way through, eventually you'll end up at the boss fight, and if you're strong enough, then you'll be able to defeat the boss, and if you're not, then you're going to die and you'll start over, etc. And this is very much a party-based game, just like Darkest Dungeon, where you have Ash, your main character, you have 8 other recruitable characters that you can mix and match combinations of to bring with you on your runs, and each character starts with their base stats and equipment when they go out, and as you make your choices and fight battles, they start gaining experience and leveling up a bit, and you're going to get choices that you would see traditionally made in like a roguelike, but in this case, kind of in the Lost Eidolon setting, you're going to get to choose from skills that you can use. You're going to get to choose other passives that might benefit your character in some way as they gain experience and get stronger. So every battle, they're going to get stronger and stronger as you make your way towards the boss fights, and every time you die and start over, they're going to go back down to 0. And on top of this, as you make your way through these various encounters to the boss fight, you're also going to get what are called resonant stones each time you complete a combat encounter. And what this does is it allows you to upgrade the equipment of one of your characters, and it's going to randomly choose one piece of equipment from each character. Each character usually has 2 weapon sets, so it could be one weapon from either weapon set, or maybe it's their armor. And it will allow you to upgrade these so that they become stronger. So you can make 1 or 2 characters. It's usually you get 1 or 2 of these each time you complete a fight, in addition to their leveling up. And sometimes the resonant stones will highly resonate with a particular character and their equipment, and in that case, it might upgrade their gear more, and a lot of the time, it'll just be very low resonance, and you can kind of just pick which character makes sense for you. So you can stack up one character and make that character really strong, or you can kind of spread it around to make everyone equally strong in most cases. And what that does is it gives you a lot of control over how you want your party to be. For instance, I find that upgrading the main character usually works out really, really good for me, so I try and upgrade him as much as I can. He's absolutely devastating in combat. Another person to upgrade a lot of the times is your healer, because you need to keep your healer alive in order to keep healing. So there are various strategies you can employ here, and it just gives you a degree of freedom that I really like. Keep in mind, though, that these upgrades that you make, just like the levels up of your characters, will also replenish or refresh every time you do a new run. So these are not permanent upgrades to your character, but rather upgrades for that specific run. So maybe one run, one of your characters is really strong, and on the next run, most of your resonance stones resonate more with another character. You might, make sense to level up that character. But each time, it's going to go back to 0, so this is not a permanent upgrade. However, there is a permanent upgrade that you will gain as you progress through the game called Sacred Embers, and you can use this resource when you're back in your base to spend at the Altar of Fire, and there are 3 skill trees there that you can basically use your points in order to give yourself permanent improvements, whether this is like boosting characters that have medium armor, boosting sword damage, making it so that when you rest at a camp, instead of half healing yourself, you'll gain full health for your characters. These are permanent upgrades that will enhance every run that you do. So every time that you run through the game and you fail, you're still going to be making some progress because of this resource, which is pretty typical of roguelike and roguelite games. And what I've really been enjoying so far about the game, besides its tactical combat, which is arguably the best part of Lost Eidolons in general, is how random each run seems to be. There are so many variables between the way the resonance stones resonate with each character's equipment, how that's going to go, what skills you get to choose from each time your characters level up, how that's going to go. Sometimes you get like a mythic skill, and those skills are absolutely devastating when you use them in combat, and they can just do some like really badass things. I haven't even seen like most of them yet, but so far they're really, really strong. When you get a character with that, it really changes the way that you act in combat and can dynamically change how you prioritize which character is attacking which. There is also a base element to the game that I briefly mentioned earlier, where you can talk to your companions, you can go through their stats and equipment and see like what skills that they have, trying to decide which to bring with you. There is like a reputation system in the game where like the more you bond with your characters, the more things you can do in combat with them together. So that's kind of interesting. I haven't really got to explore it too much, so I don't know how much of a total impact it will be on the game, because reputation does take quite a while to build up. Besides the Altar of Fire, which allows you to make passive improvements to your characters in your party at the base, the other thing you can do is promote your characters based on picking up runes when you're doing runs through the game. As you accumulate these, you'll be able to promote them each twice, I think, at the moment. So that's something else you can do at the base. But besides that, there really isn't too much more to do. Again, there is a rapport system that does come into account here while you're at the base, but I haven't really seen too much of an impact of it. And if I had one gripe about the game so far, it would be that I wish there was a little bit more to do here, but again, it's kind of a small gripe. Honestly, when I started playing the Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch, I wasn't sure it was going to work. I was very, very skeptical in the first couple hours of playing this game. I was like, how do you do a turn-based party RPG on a tactical grid every encounter, and then do the roguelike thing and make it something interesting? In the first hour or two, I was like, I'm not sure this is going to work. But every time I did a successive run, I got more and more into it, and it started growing on me after a while. And frankly, I really love roguelike and roguelite games. I like particularly roguelites, ones that you actually make, a lot of progress in each run, and some of that carries over so that you're not starting completely from scratch each time, that you are getting a little bit stronger. I really like that aspect of roguelite games. And I really love the tactical nature of Lost Eidolons combat. I love turn-based combat. Something you guys all know on our channel, that I'm a huge fan of turn-based games, even though there are not that many of them out there these days. I really like the turn-based combat, and the combination of it actually really starts to work once you see the random elements come into play. So something to note, though, before we wrap up this video, is that this is an early access game, and while it's feature complete, technically you can reach the end of the game, there are things that are currently missing from the game that are going to be added during the early access period. For instance, you'll notice almost immediately there's no voice acting in the game, and there's a lot of dialogue in this game. And it's really hard to read through all of it without that voice acting, so that's something that's going to be added over time. So I can't wait for that to be added. There's also going to be hidden bosses added to the game, including the final boss. Currently, there are 3 bosses in the game, so you'll get to do 3 run-throughs successfully on one character before, you complete what's currently in early access, which, let me tell you, is quite a bit of gameplay from what I've played so far. I think it's taken me about 5 to 8 hours, somewhere in that range, to get through the first, run through the first map and defeat the first boss. It's not easy. Every fight is quite challenging, and one of the things that's really difficult is that between each encounter, your characters just don't auto-heal back up, right? So whatever life you have on each character at the end of each encounter is what you have going into the next encounter. So even if you make it through that encounter, if you didn't do a very good job, the next encounter is going to be harder, the next encounter is going to be harder. So you really have to pay attention to what you're doing. Also, during the early access period, they're going to be adding more combat maps and random event variations. This is great, in my opinion. I'm already pretty happy with the amount of variation, frankly. But you can never really have enough randomness. I mean, the randomness and the events and things like that that happen are generally what make roguelike and roguelike games so good. The more they have, the less it feels repetitive. So I'm really happy to see that's going to be added too. And the last thing I want to leave you guys with is that because the game is launching on Steam Early Access today, it's going to be running at a 20% discount for the next 13 days. The price is going to be $15.99 USD instead of $19.99 USD. So if you want to get the game in early access and save some money in the long run, this would be a good couple of weeks to do it in. If you like what you see and it makes sense to buy it for you, then you can spend that. That's not very much money in my opinion. That's like a dinner out. That's so cheap. I actually can't believe it's that cheap. Anyway, If you guys like what you see and you want to help support the channel, you can click our link below. Had a good time with this game so far. Definitely think that it'll appeal to a lot of people in our audience. But I want to know what you guys think. What do you make of Lost Eidolons Veil of the Witch? Did you play the first game? Do you like tactical turn-based combat like I do? Do you like roguelikes? Do you like something that might be a little bit of a mashup of the two? What do you think of the game so far? Let me know in the comments below.